with our youth soccer, and as I kept walking to my right, I saw more separate groups. I saw Little League, I saw some other groups doing soccer, and then as I started driving, this was my most favorite thing. I passed the pickleball courts, which are full as they usually are. I saw a few examples of things that we feel like are thriving. They're durable. There's a lot that really happens in our community, and a few of those examples: the Veterans Day Parade, Food Truck Friday, Farmers Market, Turkey Run, Province Spring Arts and Crafts Fair, Our Lady of Grace Festival, and I could go on and on and on. There's really a lot of things happening, but I want to highlight that all of those items, those are happening independent of the city. Those are community champions stepping up and running those, so there's no strain on the city. But truly they represent, hey, we're thriving. We have wonderful community members providing these opportunities to residents. And one that I thought was super neat and highlighted to your right there is a very recent development in the community. This was just in the last few months, and those are pictures of a Facebook post, but it's a community garden that started. And it's very interesting. I was talking to Jen, and she was mentioning how in a senior leadership or executive meeting, they were discussing different things that we as a city could do to help our residents and increase what we have here in the city. And a community garden was actually one of the items that came up. But lo and behold, just not a few weeks or maybe a month later, we see this happen on social media. And it's super neat. I mean, they've got educational events. It's a community garden, so people can come rent beds. They partner with local businesses. One of the most recent posts I saw, they had a local Girl Scout troop have a bed, and they were learning about plants, and so it's super cool. And the city had no part in that other than we created an environment where community members can step up and create something special. And a question, and this can be hypothetical or not, but what if when we had brought that idea up, what if the city had started that? We're now in charge of maintenance. We're very heavily involved. It takes time. It takes money. Is this something that we can then continue years into the future? I mean, if there's economic unrest, is that a service that can we provide? But instead, we've got an exceptional community member who's stepping up and providing something to our residents that takes bandwidth off of the city, and so we can focus things like building roads, ensuring our community is safe, etc. And all these are the tenets. These were shown to you at futures planning, and so I'll skip through. I do want to just, and I can go back and read them if you'd like, but I do want to highlight on point number 5 something that was changed based on feedback. At the very end where it says the city will price the activity at a market rate. Previously it said we will price it in such a way as to not compete with private nonprofit sectors. We said the city will price activity at market rate to provide a little bit more flexibility with how we price that when we're looking at what are other cities doing, what are the nonprofit private sectors doing, and what are potentially even things doing states away. And so we have a little bit of flexibility on which areas we look at and how we apply that. There we go. So as we look to put this strategic framework in action, these are just a couple of examples, and I kind of want to walk through. And if you look at point number 6, I'll go back and highlight that. It says, if any recreation, art, event, music, or educational offering that are done by the city can feasibly be done by the private nonprofit sector at a sufficient quality and reasonable cost, the city has a responsibility to stop their offering or transfer the offering over to the private nonprofit sector in order to protect taxpayer dollars. And so I mentioned youth soccer. Over the last year, we've seen community members begin to step up to the plate. We've seen CCV They just built a beautiful church, and as part of what they offer, they are starting to offer a youth soccer program. We've seen AYSO, which is a nationally recognized nonprofit that provides recreational soccer. They're starting to be in schools. We've also been approached by FC Arizona, who's currently a club team. They do offer recreational offerings in other cities in the valley. We've also seen Paladin Sports come into the community, who's also starting to offer this. So at this point, when we apply the strategic framework, we recognize, are we as a city, should we continue to offer this when there's other organizations who are experts in this who can potentially take this over? And all of these things won't happen at once. We have to look at these case by case to see how we can best implement this in our community. But if there's an opportunity where it makes sense, there's partners who can take something over, they can provide a quality service, and it saves staff bandwidth with our time, and it would reduce costs to the city, that's a massive win where it's both thriving, the program is still happening, it's still being offered to residents, but there's no strain, whether fiscally or time, on the city. And another example is our senior center, and I do want to quickly mention, these are not to say staff don't do a great job running these. I do want to say, staff do a really, really great job running these. But our senior center, we're currently offering, different programs for our seniors. Up in the valley, there are insurance companies, I'll mention Optum. They have senior centers that are free and open to the public. They do classes, they have fitness centers in them. They provide space to do different activities. They partner with a lot of different senior services. And again, I'm not saying that this is something we will do. I just mentioned this is something we as staff will explore according to the strategic framework. And if that partnership can make sense, and again, we don't know, it just means we will explore it. But if we could increase the services to seniors, it's still free to the public, and it would reduce costs to the city, that is a recipe to be both thriving and durable. And I want to move forward to talk about some things that we have done that are in line with the framework, but I do want to highlight the fact that this isn't, I want to be clear that we have not specifically applied this framework in its entirety. So these are flavors in how we've done it. But once this is adopted, we'll be able to move forward and do, bigger, greater things, and have very clear direction on how to move forward. But these are just some examples of, what types of things you'll see moving forward. So a couple of years ago, the city was doing camps. Boys and Girls Club was in the area there already providing that service. So we said, why are we doubling an effort that a community champion's already doing? And so we moved those over to Boys and Girls Club. They're a wonderful aspect of the community, and it's ultimately, it saves the city money. In a small way over at Copper Sky, we were offering personal training. Again, staff bandwidth, time, money. We actually created a new offering to where people could essentially pay us a fee, and they could operate their personal training business essentially independent of the city. So that service is still offered to members of the community without any additional strain on the city. And there's some trainers that are, they're really loving it. We've had new trainers step up to the plate, so that's been great to see. Another example is CCV. We previously have run movies in our pool over at Copper Sky, but we actually partnered with CCV, and they actually paid for our staff, and they ran the whole event. They paid for the licensing to provide the movie, and they made it free to the public. And so again, that saved us time, it saved us money, but it was still a wonderful offering, and people loved it. I was there with my little 18-month baby, and we loved it. It was awesome. And another one that is super exciting, and you'll see an announcement here on this in the next week or two, but we actually partnered with Boat Rentals of America. So you'll see right now a floating dock is being constructed on Copper Sky. Boats have been delivered, but this service is an idea that was originally brought forth by the city, and the original thought was, are we as a city running this? We were fortunate enough to find someone who has done this, they're experts, and we've partnered with them to where all of the operations are on them. They shared costs of getting this started, and moving forward, there's almost no time or money from the city's perspective to devote to this. So again, all of these examples are, hey, we have some wonderful things happening in the community, but in a durable way, it's reducing our time, our money to then devote to other more important, not necessarily more important, but other priorities that the city has, including, roads and things of that nature. That concludes the strategic framework portion. Is there any questions, or do we want to keep moving, save the questions for the end?
It might be good to have questions on individual pieces, I think.
Perfect.
Councilmember Knorr, you look like you
have questions?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Thanks, Mayor.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, David, for the presentation. And I know that we did go over this at future planning as well, but I feel like this is definitely has more meat to the bones
Sure.
in terms of what the direction that this strategic framework would go. So I appreciate that clarification.